upside down apple tart, or apple tart tatin, or tart tatin demoiselle. It's a very, very traditional French dessert and one of the easiest ones to make. The ingredients are really quite straightforward. We've got 50 grams of caster sugar, 50 grams of unsalted butter. We've got 4 Braeburn or Cox apples, which we've peeled, cut in half and cored. They get placed on top of the sugar and butter. Then we start to caramelize it. Once the apples are caramelized, we then top it with a disc of ready rolled puff pastry. Unfortunately, they don't come in circles. You'll have to cut that out yourself, so you need to find a plate or a base of a cake tin which just fits slightly larger than the pan itself. Cut your disc out and that's ready to go. Again, when I first tasted this dish over 30 years ago now, I couldn't believe it. I asked Albert Roux, how did you make it? And he told me the butter, the sugar, the apples and the pastry. I said, no, it's I want to know about the apple tart, the tart tatin. And he goes, Stephen, I've just told you. And that's the secret of this dish. It is so easy, and the results that you get back from it are truly wonderful for not a lot of effort. So let's start the cooking process. What's crucial with a tart tatin is the choice of apples. You don't get much more seasonal than this dessert in the autumn, winter and early spring months. The apples to use are either Cox's Orange Pippin, very old traditional English apple, an apple called a russet, which is a very dense apple, has a short season, very, very tight flesh. But somebody a few years ago asked me to do a tart tatin in the summer, and I thought, tricky, because the apples are not at the best then. But somebody whispered in my ear that Braeburns work. So I'm using a Braeburn today just to show you that they actually do work. So they're not as good as a Cox or a russet, but I have to say they're a good substitute. Those are the only 3 apples that you can use for a tart tatin. If you use anything else, you're going to have problems because the apples will break up. By using those 3 apples that I mentioned, you won't have any problems. I'm using a Parisian scoop, but you can also use the end of a peeler just to take the core out. And you can see here, make sure that all that core comes out. There's nothing worse than making this beautiful apple tart and your friends are picking little bits of core out. The apples then just go in the bottom like so, and that's ready to cook. We then start to caramelize the apples in the pan, and that's where you need to be careful. You need to watch them and stay with them. That's what I did before. It takes about 15 minutes to caramelize them properly. So we're going to turn the heat up and just show you what we mean. And what happens is the butter and sugar melt, the water that comes out of the apples mixes with the butter and sugar and forms this caramel, and you get this lovely, lovely dark golden colour. Now what's crucial is you do take it this far. If you don't take it that dark, you're going to end up with a peely wally or anemic looking apple tart or a tart tatin. There's nothing worse than that. So we're going to caramelize that one. I've already cut one off a wee bit earlier, so we're going to take that one out and have a look at the finished process. There we go. So that's the apple tart. Lovely golden pastry on top. One thing to bear in mind is that when these come out of the oven, the handles are very, very hot indeed. So be careful. So either buy one of these things, it's a little sleeve which goes over the handle, or put a cloth around it so you don't forget. And believe me, we still do it in professional kitchens. I did it last week. You'd think after 30 years cooking that we might remember, but we don't sometimes. So please bear that in mind. Those pan handles are very hot, just out of the oven, and they will give you a nasty little nip. Back to this one, you can see the apples are caramelizing, and there's this beautiful colour that you've got off there, like so. Once they've got to that stage, they're then ready to go in the oven. All we need to do is to take the pastry, like so, remove it from the greaseproof paper, And I just like to roll the edge back. And this is just creating this little lip, this little edge which goes on the inside of the apple tart like so. So we're just going to roll it about like so. The pastry then just goes over the top of the apples like so. And then you then use a knife or a spoon and just tuck the pastry in down around the apples. This is to create the edge which will become apparent when we tip it out. The edge of the pan's a wee bit warm, so just take a little bit of time. So you can see the pastry's been tucked up underneath the apples. We poke in the middle. That's just let the steam out when it's in the oven, and that's going to go in the oven as per your recipe. In the oven at about 180, and away we go for about 15 to 20 minutes. When the apple tart is cooked, tart tatin, it's best to let it rest a little while. The caramel is going to be runny and hot, so again, when you're demoulding these things, you need to take care. Make sure that it's loose, so just make sure that it's all spinning around. That's the trick to know that it's all ready to flip out. There we go. Don't forget it's hot, so you need to be careful. Make sure you take a large plate. If you're not sure, take 2 cloths and put a cloth over this hand as well. So take your cloth, put it like so. That way, if you do spill any caramel, you're going to catch it here and not on your arm. Gently get your apple tart like so. Make sure it's loose. I'm just going to give that another minute. Not quite sure. So I'm just going to give that another couple of moments just to make sure it's nice and loose. And there, just going to put it on a little bit of heat. So we just brought it out of the oven. We'll just let it rest a little bit, and I'm just going to make sure it's all nice and loose before we demold it. And we're almost there. There we go. Just make sure it's coming away. And the trick is just to make sure the pastry is rolling around like so. Get the plate ready. There we go. So get hold of the pan, cloth on your arm if you think you need to, like so, and just give it a shake, and the apple tart just drop out. There we go. And there is your lovely golden tart tatin. So we've gone from that to that in about 30 minutes, which is not a bad day's work. I would personally serve a really good vanilla ice cream with it, creme fraiche. You could even serve a Greek yogurt, or you could serve double cream. Or if you're really hedonistic, why not some double cream and vanilla ice cream at the same time? Yum.